My name is Chloe, and I guess you could say I was the family's favorite ATM. Not in a spoiled, showered with gifts way, but in a quiet, expected to fix everything with my own money kind of way. I'm in my late 20s, an artist and graphic designer, which my family generally considered a nice hobby rather than a real career. Meanwhile, my real career earnings, modest as they were compared to what they thought I had, were constantly being siphoned off. There was Jackson, my older brother, who cycled through get-rich-quick schemes faster than laundry cycles, always needing a few thousand to cover essential business costs, or more likely, gambling debts I found out about later. My mom, Caroline, always needed money for emergencies that somehow always involved high-end shopping or last-minute spa trips. My dad, Thomas, was the worst, always pulling me into shady investment opportunities that conveniently required my cash flow to stabilize his over-leveraged positions, tied to Sterling Properties, the real estate development company Grandpa Arthur had built. And then there was Aunt Melanie, a close confidant of my mom's, always needing a small loan for some vague crisis, which were never, ever repaid. For years, I told myself that's just how families are. You help each other out. But it felt less like helping and more like being a human shield constantly deflecting their financial messes. It was exhausting, soul-crushing work, and I rarely got so much as a genuine thank you. Just the expectation of more. My grandpa Arthur Sterling was different. He was the one who encouraged my art, saw my quiet determination, and always told me to trust my gut. He built Sterling Properties from the ground up, a company he was fiercely proud of, but in his later years, he became increasingly frustrated with the way Thomas was managing it, more focus on quick profits than lasting quality or ethical practices. Grandpa Arthur passed away a few months ago, and honestly, his absence left a huge void. He was the only one who seemed to see me for who I was, not just what I could provide. Last week, I got a text from my mom. "Darling, we're having a small, formal celebration for Grandpa Arthur's legacy next Saturday at the house. Just close family. We'd love for you to be there. RSVP ASAP." It was odd. My family wasn't exactly known for formal celebrations unless there was something in it for them. And legacy celebration. It sounded so performative. My gut twisted, a familiar sensation I'd learned to pay attention to. I texted back, "Okay, I'll be there," but my fingers felt heavy on the screen. The week leading up to it was full of strange little nudges. Aunt Melanie called, gushing about how wonderful it would be for the family to come together during this difficult time, then subtly asked if I was comfortable financially after Grandpa's passing, hinting that things were up in the air with his estate. Jackson sent a series of increasingly enthusiastic texts about the party, asking if I was excited and if I was dressing up. It all felt forced, too much, like they were trying to orchestrate a specific mood. The day of the celebration, I drove to the family home feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. The house, which I'd helped with a major renovation on a few years back, looked pristine, cars lining the street. More cars than just close family. As I walked up the path, I could hear the murmur of voices inside, punctuated by bursts of forced laughter. Caroline opened the door, her smile painted on, too bright. "Chloe, darling. You made it. Come in, come in." She pulled me into the foyer. The living room was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years, cousins, second cousins, even a few distant in-laws I barely recognized. Everyone stopped talking, turning to look at me as I entered. "Surprise!" a few people called out awkwardly. It wasn't my birthday, wasn't a surprise party. The whole thing felt off. Thomas was holding court near the fireplace, looking overly formal in a suit. Jackson stood beside him, fidgeting, while Melanie hovered nearby, observing me with sharp eyes. Caroline steered me towards an armchair near a large coffee table, where a formal-looking leather folder sat conspicuously. "Sit here, sweetheart," she said, her voice sweet but her grip on my arm a little too tight. Thomas came over, handing me a glass of sparkling cider. "Thought you might like this," he said with a wide grin. I hadn't had sparkling cider since I was a kid and hated it even then. Another small detail that felt wrong. Thomas cleared his throat, tapping his glass. "Welcome everyone to this celebration of Arthur Sterling's remarkable legacy." He launched into a boilerplate speech about Grandpa's hard work and dedication, listing off Sterling Properties' achievements. As he spoke, Caroline subtly gestured towards the folder on the table. My eyes were drawn to it. The leather was new, gleaming under the lights. My gut clenched. Finally, Thomas finished his speech. Now, he said, gesturing towards me and the table, as part of formalizing Arthur's wishes and ensuring a smooth transition, there's just a small piece of paperwork we need to go over with Chloe. Caroline reached for the folder. My fingers felt cold as I picked it up. The paper inside was heavy, legal-looking. The title page read, in bold, formal script, Arthur Sterling Legacy Trust Heirs Relinquishment Agreement. My heart started to pound, but a strange calm settled over me. I had anticipated this, hadn't I? I scanned the document, my eyes immediately drawn to a specific paragraph. It stated that I, Chloe, my last name, as the named primary beneficiary of the Arthur Sterling Legacy Trust, would hereby irrevocably relinquish all present and future rights, interests, and claims to the trust and associated assets, transferring control and benefit to a newly defined family management entity. I looked up, meeting Caroline's eyes. Her smile had tightened. Thomas was watching me intently. Jackson looked down at his shoes. Melanie just stared, unblinking. "Mom," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the strained silence. "What exactly is this?" Caroline stepped forward quickly, her hand reaching out as if to cover the document. "Oh, darling, it's just a formality. Standard procedure for estates of this size. Tax implications, you know. We just need you to sign here, quickly." "Standard procedure?" I asked, my voice gaining strength. "This document asks me to sign away everything related to Grandpa Arthur's trust. To transfer control to a family management entity that includes you, Dad, Jackson, and Melanie." My eyes swept over their faces, watching their forced composure crack. "This isn't a formality. This is asking me to give away my inheritance." Thomas stepped in, his voice slightly shaky. "Now, Chloe, don't get emotional. It's for the family's benefit. Centralizing the assets. It will be managed wisely for everyone." Jackson finally looked up, his voice whiny. "Yeah, Chloe, everyone thinks this is the right way to do it. Just sign it. Don't make a big deal." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "So this is the celebration? A surprise party to trick me into signing away Grandpa Arthur's legacy." I closed the folder slowly, deliberately. The room was absolutely silent now, all those distant relatives staring, sensing the drama. Caroline's face was pale, her painted smile gone. "Chloe," she whispered, her voice sharp, "don't. Not here. Everyone is watching." "Exactly," I said, standing up, the folder still in my hand. "Let them watch. Let them see what this family legacy celebration really is." My voice was steady, stronger than I expected. "I won't be signing this. Not today. Not ever." I placed the folder back on the table as if it were contaminated. The silence stretched, thick with tension and unspoken accusations. I looked at my family, at the faces I thought I knew, and they felt like strangers. "I'm leaving," I stated, walking towards the door. "Chloe, if you walk out now, there will be consequences." Thomas's voice boomed after me, full of bluster. I stopped, turned back, and looked him directly in the eye. "There have always been consequences for me," I said softly. "Consequences of your actions. Tonight, there will be consequences for yours. But they won't be mine to bear." And I walked out of that house, leaving behind the shocked faces, the fake celebration, and the lifetime of being the family's financial fix-it person. Riley was waiting, her face a mask of concern. She didn't say a word, just opened the car door for me. The drive away from the house was quiet for a few minutes. My heart was pounding, a mix of adrenaline, hurt, and a strange, burgeoning sense of freedom. Tears welled up, not from sadness, but from the sheer weight of years of manipulation crashing down. Riley gently placed a hand on my arm. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "No," I choked out, the tears finally falling. "But I will be." "God, Riley, they tried to trick me. With a party." "I know," she said, her voice filled with empathy. "I saw their faces when you walked out. They weren't expecting you to stand up to them." We talked for a long time that night. I poured out years of frustration, the constant demands, the casual way they treated my money and my efforts. Riley just listened, offering comfort and reinforcing that my feelings were valid. As I calmed down, I remembered Grandpa Arthur's message, the one telling me to contact Mr. David Sterling if things felt unsettled. It seemed cryptic at the time, but now, after witnessing my family's scheme, it clicked into place. Grandpa knew. He must have known this was a possibility. The next morning, the first thing I did was call Mr. David Sterling's office. His secretary was formal but polite and scheduled me for an appointment that afternoon. The waiting felt endless, filled with a nervous energy. I knew confronting them was just the first step. Now I needed to understand the path Grandpa Arthur had laid out. Mr. Sterling's office was quiet and felt grounded, a stark contrast to the fake glitz of my family home. He was a man in his late 60s, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He listened patiently as I recounted the events of this celebration, nodding occasionally. "Ms. Chloe," he said once I had finished, "what you experienced, while distressing, was not entirely unexpected by your grandfather. Mr. Arthur Sterling was a man of great foresight, and he understood the dynamics within your family very well. He explained the structure of the Arthur Sterling Legacy Trust. As the primary beneficiary, the bulk of his liquid assets were designated to me, but with specific stipulations designed to protect the funds from exactly the kind of behavior I'd witnessed. The trust was for my well-being, my education, independent ventures, expressly forbidding involvement with family members, and philanthropic endeavors." Then, he revealed the protective layer. Mr. Sterling was concerned that his wishes might be challenged or that attempts would be made to coerce you, Mr. Sterling stated. Therefore, he included a clause. A very stringent one. If any beneficiary or relative attempts to legally contest the will or trust, or if there is documented evidence of them attempting to coerce or manipulate you into relinquishing your rights, a significant portion, 60%, to be precise, of the trust's liquid assets will be immediately and irrevocably transferred to a list of specific charitable organizations your grandfather supported throughout his life. My breath hitched. 60%. That would wipe out the vast majority of the cash available. It was a brilliant, brutal deterrent. My family, they don't know about this, do they? I asked. Mr. Sterling gave a small, knowing smile. No. That clause was held in a separate, confidential rider, known only to myself and a few necessary legal parties. Your grandfather believed it was a necessary incentive for good behavior, or at the very least, a consequence if they chose poorly. He then told me Grandpa Arthur had left a video message. One specifically for me, and another separate message for the rest of the family to be delivered at my discretion or under specific circumstances. He handed me a small, encrypted USB drive. "This contains his message for you, Miss Chloe," he said. "And the other recording for the family, should you decide the time is right to show it." I took the drive, my hand trembling slightly. Later, back in the safety of my apartment, with Riley beside me, I plugged the drive into my laptop. Grandpa Arthur's face filled the screen. He looked calm, wise, just as I remembered him. "Chloe," his voice was warm, slightly frail, "if you are watching this, then things are unfolding as I feared they might. I know you are the most capable, the most honest, and the most independent among them. You have always valued integrity over material gain. That is why I have entrusted you with my legacy." He spoke of his disappointment in the others, their focus on superficial wealth, and their inability to manage resources responsibly. He explained the trust, its purpose, and the protective clause, outlining his hope that it would prevent them from harming me or his legacy. "I saw how they treated you," he said, his eyes sharp even on screen. "Always taking, rarely giving. My greatest wish is for you to live freely, without that burden. Use what I have given you to build your own future, and if you choose, to do good in the world. But do not let them take it from you. Do not let them manipulate you. Be strong, my girl." Watching the video was cathartic. Tears streamed down my face, but they were cleansing. Validation, comfort, and a fierce determination settled deep within me. Grandpa Arthur saw me. He trusted me, and he had given me the tools to fight back, not just for myself, but for his memory and his values. Riley held my hand as the video ended. "He really knew, didn't he?" she murmured. "He did," I said, wiping my eyes. "And he gave me a way to stop them." The idea formed quickly. a sense of clarity washing over me. They had tried to trap me in their space on their terms, with a fake celebration. I would confront them in my space on my terms, with the undeniable truth. I decided to use the second video message, the one for the family. It felt like the only way to cut through their denials and manipulations. I needed to get them all together again, this time with my agenda. I sent a short, simple text message to Caroline, Thomas, Jackson, and Melanie. I've thought about everything that happened. It read, I want to try and resolve this peacefully. Can everyone come to my apartment tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. to talk? Riley raised an eyebrow as I showed her the message. Peaceful? They're going to smell a trap. Good, I replied, a wry smile on my face. Let them. Their greed will make them too confident to stay away. They'll think I'm ready to negotiate, maybe settle for a smaller share. They won't expect what's coming. Sure enough, replies came quickly. Caroline was overly enthusiastic. Oh, darling, I knew you'd see reason. Of course, we'll be there. Thomas was brief, confirming 7 p.m. Jackson's reply was a hopeful, awesome. See ya. Only Melanie's was slightly reserved, looking forward to a productive discussion. They were walking right into it. Riley helped me prepare my apartment. We arranged the living room furniture to face the large TV. I borrowed a proper presentation cable from a friend to connect my laptop. I printed out key pages from the trust document, including the charity clause summary, to have on hand. I wanted my space to feel controlled and serious, not comfortable. There would be no refreshments, no casual atmosphere. This was a meeting, a confrontation. As I set up, I felt a quiet intensity settle over me. The fear was gone, replaced by a focused determination. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was executing Grandpa Arthur's plan. Every detail, every document, felt like a piece of armor. The doorbell rang precisely at 7 p.m. I took a deep breath, smoothed my shirt, and walked to the door. Opening it, I saw Caroline, Thomas, Jackson, and Melanie standing there, looking expectant. Caroline wore a calculating smile. Thomas looked impatient. Jackson was fidgeting. Melanie's eyes scanned my apartment, assessing. Come in, I said, my voice calm, stepping aside. They entered, looking slightly surprised by the formal arrangement of the room. I didn't offer to take their coats. Please have a seat. They settled into the chairs, looking around. Caroline started, Well, Chloe, it's good of you to invite us. We were very concerned after you left the other night. We just want what's best for you, dear. I walked over to my laptop, which was connected to the TV screen. I understand you have concerns, I said, my voice steady. And I understand you have certain expectations regarding Grandpa Arthur's estate and Sterling properties. I paused, looking at each of their faces. Grandpa Arthur anticipated these expectations. And he left a message specifically for all of you. I clicked play. The screen flickered, and then Grandpa Arthur's face appeared, larger than life. The family visibly stiffened, their expressions changing from expectant to surprised, then quickly to uneasy. Grandpa's voice, calm and clear, filled the room. Caroline, Thomas, Jackson, Melanie. If you are watching this, it means you have not accepted my wishes regarding my legacy. It means you have likely tried to pressure or manipulate Chloe. His gaze seemed to look directly at them through the screen. I structured my trust and my estate precisely as I did because I lost confidence in your ability to manage wealth responsibly and ethically. Your focus has often been on short-term gain and personal indulgence, rather than the long-term health of the family's resources or the values I held dear. He explained again that the bulk of his liquid assets were in the Arthur Sterling Legacy Trust, managed for Chloe's benefit and restricted in its use. He explained that he saw in Chloe the integrity and capability needed to handle his legacy, qualities he found lacking in the others. Jackson shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Thomas's face was growing red. Caroline looked stunned. Then, Grandpa Arthur delivered the blow. Furthermore, his voice became firmer. Should any of you attempt to legally challenge my will or this trust, or should there be any proven attempt to coerce, defraud, or improperly influence Chloe regarding her inheritance, a clause will be triggered. 60% of the trust's liquid assets will be immediately transferred to the charitable organizations I have designated. The family's reactions were instantaneous and dramatic. Caroline gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Thomas sputtered, "What? That's insane." Jackson exclaimed, 60%? Melanie's eyes narrowed in disbelief and fury. Grandpa Arthur continued calmly, listing the names of the charities. "This clause is non-negotiable and irreversible once triggered. It is my way of ensuring that if my wishes are not respected, and if Chloe is unduly pressured, a significant portion of what you covet will instead be used for the greater good, precisely where you cannot access it." He concluded his message with a stern look. "I hope you will choose wisely. My legacy is meant to build up, not tear down. Do not let your greed destroy what little goodwill remains." The screen went black. The silence in the room was deafening for a moment, broken only by Caroline's shaky breathing. I walked over and turned off the TV. I faced them, my expression calm. "As Grandpa Arthur said," I stated, my voice steady, "I know exactly what you tried to do. This document," I held up the relinquishment agreement they had given me, "proves your intent. Any attempt to legally challenge the will or the trust, or any further pressure, and 60% is gone." Just like that. Thomas found his voice first, blustering. "This is ridiculous. He can't do that. It's not fair. We're his family." "Fair?" I echoed softly. "Is it fair that I worked 3 jobs in college while you took out loans in my name? Is it fair that I paid off Dad's investments and Mom's emergencies for years without a word of thanks? Is it fair you tried to trick me out of everything Grandpa left me with a fake party?" I met his furious gaze. "No, Dad. Fair isn't the point anymore. Consequences are." Caroline, recovering slightly, tried a different tactic. "Chloe, darling, please. Think about this. We're family. We need to stick together. This money can benefit all of us managed properly. We know how to handle large sums." "Do you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Because from what I've seen, managing large sums involves losing them in shady deals, racking up debt, and using company funds like personal piggy banks." Melanie flinched slightly at the mention of company funds. Jackson whined, "But Chloe, I need help. My new business." "Your new business is your responsibility, Jackson." I cut him off. "Just like your old debts were mine. That stops now." Melanie spoke, her voice cold. "You think you've won? Keeping everything to yourself? Family is supposed to share. Family is supposed to support each other, not prey on each other," I retorted, looking directly at her. "I've shared enough. More than enough. Now I'm securing what was left for me, with the protections Grandpa Arthur wisely put in place." I placed the summary of the charity clause on the coffee table in front of them. "This is the reality," I said. "Any action against me or the trust, and you lose 60% forever. Mr. Sterling has all the documentation ready to trigger this clause automatically. Consider this your only warning." I stood by the door. "This meeting is over," I stated. "You have the information. The choice of what happens next is yours. But choose wisely." They were silent, staring at the document on the table, at the proof of Grandpa Arthur's foresight and my newfound leverage. Their faces were a mixture of shock, rage, and dawning realization. One by one, they stood up and left my apartment, defeated, the tension palpable. The silence in my apartment after they left felt different this time. It wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I had faced them, unarmed except for the truth and my grandfather's wisdom, and I had held my ground. This was just the first step, I knew, but it was a crucial one. A few days later, Mr. Sterling contacted me again. "Miss Chloe," he said, "given their reaction and based on Mr. Sterling's instructions, it is now time to reveal the next layer of his provisions. This concerns Sterling Properties." He explained that Grandpa Arthur had been deeply concerned about Thomas's management of the company in his later years. He had suspected and quietly documented instances of mismanagement, unethical practices, and the misuse of company funds for personal gain by Thomas, Jackson, and Melanie. Grandpa Arthur, foreseeing that control of the company would be a major point of contention and potentially misused further, had restructured its ownership. He had transferred controlling interest, effectively full ownership, of Sterling Properties to me upon his death, structured in a way that would become fully actionable if Thomas failed to uphold the company's ethical standards or attempted to block my rightful inheritance. The extensive documentation Grandpa collected served as irrefutable proof of Thomas's unsuitability and triggered the final transfer of control to me. Mr. Sterling had the complete file, years of meticulous records documenting Thomas's fraudulent expenses billed to the company, Jackson's consulting fees that went directly to casinos, Melanie's elaborate business travel, and crucially, records showing how loans taken out years ago in my name when I was just starting out were actually tied to Sterling Properties projects or used to cover up the family's financial holes. Grandpa Arthur hadn't just suspected them. He had built a rock-solid case. Mr. Sterling also mentioned Martha, a longtime trusted employee at Sterling Properties who had been close to Grandpa Arthur. Martha, sensing something was wrong and fiercely loyal to Grandpa's vision, had quietly cooperated with Mr. Sterling in gathering some of the later documentation, providing context and ensuring key records weren't destroyed. She was ready to assist me. Learning the full extent of their deception, how they had not only wanted to steal my inheritance, but were also actively running Grandpa Arthur's company into the ground and had used my identity for their schemes years ago, ignited a cold fury within me. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about integrity, about protecting my grandfather's life's work, and about finally putting a stop to the cycle of abuse that had impacted me for so long. I decided the confrontation needed to happen at the heart of the problem, Sterling Properties. I scheduled a meeting with Thomas at the company headquarters. Mr. Sterling agreed to be present, lending legal authority. The Sterling Properties building felt different as I walked into it with Mr. Sterling. It was imposing, a symbol of Grandpa Arthur's success, but now, knowing the rot beneath the surface under Thomas's management, it felt tainted. We were shown into a large, formal conference room, Thomas's domain. Thomas was already there, trying to project an air of authority, though his eyes held a flicker of unease. He likely expected another discussion about the trust, perhaps hoping to negotiate after the charity clause shock. He didn't know I was there to take everything. "Chloe," he began, trying for a conciliatory tone, "I'm glad we can talk, reasonably, about Arthur's estate. There must be a way we can work this out for the family." I didn't sit down immediately. Mr. Sterling placed a thick file on the table. "Thomas," I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion, "we're not here to talk about the trust. We're here to talk about Sterling Properties." His face paled slightly. "What about Sterling Properties?" Grandpa Arthur was very clear in his later directives. I continued, picking up the file. He had concerns about the management of the company. Significant concerns. I opened the file and began listing, calmly, factually. "We have documentation here, Thomas. Years of it. Falsified invoices billing personal trips as business expenses. Records of company funds diverted to cover Jackson's gambling debts. Extensive documentation regarding Melanie's fraudulent billing, and records showing how loans were taken out in my name years ago, linked directly to company projects, used to cover up financial holes you created." I watched his face crumble as I spoke, presenting copies of the most damning documents one by one. The arrogance melted away, replaced by shock and fear. This is impossible," he stammered. "Where did you get this?" "Grandpa Arthur kept meticulous records," Mr. Sterling interjected smoothly. "He anticipated this might be necessary. This is all wrong. It was for the family. Business is complicated." Thomas's voice was rising, desperation creeping in. "Complex, yes, but not fraudulent," I stated, my voice sharp. "You misused Grandpa's legacy, Thomas. You didn't just run the company. You ran it like your personal piggy bank, covering your tracks with lies and even dragging me into your schemes years ago without my knowledge. Then came the final blow. Because of this documented mismanagement and your disregard for his values," I continued, my gaze unwavering, "Grandpa Arthur restructured the ownership of Sterling Properties. Effective upon his passing and contingent on these findings, controlling interest in the company has been transferred to me. I am the new owner." Mr. Sterling slid a set of notarized legal documents across the table, proof of the ownership transfer. Thomas stared at them, his jaw slack. The realization hit him with full force. He hadn't just lost the chance to access the inheritance, he had lost the company, his position, Everything he thought was his right. You can't do this, he finally choked out. I already have, I said, picking up another document from the file. Mr. Sterling has prepared this. Your resignation as CEO and from the board of Sterling Properties. I placed the resignation letter in front of him. You can sign this now and step away quietly. Or I will take all of this documentation, the evidence of fraud, misuse of company funds, and using my identity for loans to the SEC, the IRS, and the Financial Crimes Unit. Your choice. Thomas looked from the documents to me, his face a mask of disbelief and defeat. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The evidence was overwhelming, compiled by Grandpa Arthur himself. He slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. His hand was shaking visibly as he reached for the pen. If I sign this, he mumbled, his voice barely audible, will you keep the rest quiet? The family name. Your actions brought the family name into disrepute, not me exposing them, I stated plainly. If you sign, I will focus on cleaning up Sterling Properties and implementing Grandpa Arthur's vision. But make no mistake, if you or anyone else in the family tries to interfere, retaliate, or continue your old ways, all of this becomes public record. My priority is protecting Grandpa's legacy and myself. Your reputation is now entirely dependent on your future behavior. After a long, tense moment, Thomas signed the resignation letter. I gathered the documents, feeling a profound sense of finality. This is done, I said. Sterling Properties is now under new management. My management. Leaving the Sterling Properties building that day felt like walking out of a cage I hadn't even realized I was fully trapped in. It wasn't just about money or a company. It was about reclaiming my identity, my future, and honoring the trust and values of the one person in my family who truly loved me. In the weeks that followed, the news rippled through the family and their social circle. Thomas's sudden resignation from Sterling Properties, vague mentions of restructuring and a change in leadership. I officially took over. With Mr. Sterling's legal guidance and Martha's invaluable operational knowledge and loyalty, I began the daunting task of cleaning house. We implemented forensic audits, replaced key personnel who had been complicit or ineffective under Thomas, and began steering the company back towards the ethical practices Grandpa Arthur had championed. Martha became my COO, her years of experience and integrity proving essential. I didn't keep the inheritance money solely for myself, despite having every right to. Inspired by Grandpa Arthur and the charity clause he had so wisely put in place, I established the Arthur Sterling Legacy and Integrity Foundation. Funded by a percentage of Sterling Properties profits that I formalized, and partially using some of the inheritance funds, the foundation's mission was clear: to provide financial literacy and ethical education for young people, and perhaps most importantly, to offer resources, counseling, and legal aid for individuals who were victims of financial manipulation and abuse by their own families. It was a way to turn my own pain and Grandpa's foresight into something that could help others avoid or escape similar situations. Life changed dramatically. I was no longer just Chloe the artist, occasionally called upon for financial aid. I was Chloe, head of Sterling Properties, founder of a nonprofit, a person with agency and control over my own life. My relationship with Caroline, Thomas, Jackson, and Melanie was practically non-existent. They were reeling from the loss of access to the inheritance and the company, facing their own financial realities. Jackson reportedly got into more serious trouble related to his debts. Caroline and Melanie struggled to maintain their lavish lifestyles. The social whispers, while not a public scandal, were enough to isolate them. A couple of years later, I received a letter from Caroline. Thomas had some health issues, not life-threatening, but enough to scare them, and they were facing significant financial difficulties, having depleted their remaining resources through poor choices. She asked if I would be willing to meet. After consulting with Mr. Sterling and careful consideration, I agreed. I chose to meet them in my office at Sterling Properties, the place that symbolized Grandpa's true legacy and my own journey to reclamation. They arrived looking noticeably older, more subdued. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a weary tension. Caroline was less impeccably dressed. Thomas looked gaunt. They didn't try the old charm or manipulation tactics. They spoke hesitantly, expressing regret for past misunderstandings and their current struggles, being careful not to explicitly ask for money. I listened calmly. I felt a complex mix of sadness for their state and a firm resolve to maintain my boundaries. I understand you're in a difficult position, I said, my voice soft but clear. And I'm not going to pretend the past didn't happen. You made choices that hurt me, that went against everything Grandpa Arthur believed in. I slid 2 envelopes across the desk towards them. I can't be your financial solution anymore, I stated. That chapter is closed. Grandpa's legacy is being used as he intended, and the company is being run ethically. But, I continued as they looked hesitantly at the envelopes, if you are truly ready to make changes, I can offer help in a different way. Inside the envelopes weren't checks. They were lists. Lists of reputable financial counseling services, debt management programs, and resources for addressing compulsive behaviors like gambling or overspending. These are resources that can help you address the root causes of your difficulties, I explained. If you commit to seeking help, I am willing to cover the costs of the counseling sessions themselves, but I will not be paying off debts or providing funds for living expenses. That is a line I will not cross again. Caroline and Thomas looked at the lists, then at me. There was a flicker of disappointment, but also perhaps a hint of surprise that I was offering anything at all, even if it wasn't the money they likely still hoped for. Arthur would have been proud of you, Thomas said quietly, his voice rough. He was, I replied, a small, genuine smile finally touching my lips. He made sure I knew that. They left shortly after, taking the envelopes with them. There were no hugs, no promises of reconciliation. Just a quiet, definitive ending to the dynamic that had defined so much of my life. Later that evening, I visited the Arthur Sterling Legacy and Integrity Foundation's Community Center. A group of young adults were gathered for a seminar on identifying red flags in family financial relationships. I stood in the back, observing quietly. No one noticed me. I was just another face in the shadow. But watching them, knowing that Grandpa Arthur's legacy, the company he built, and even the pain my family had caused, were now contributing to helping others find their own financial footing and stand against manipulation, I felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't just about stopping my family, it was about building something better. And for the first time in my life, the weight I carried felt less like a burden and more like purpose.